Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe on this Thursday. Going to be speaking about the future of Christian Pulisic in today's episode. Some big stories coming out about him in recent days regarding a potential shock summer exit, given he's not playing that much for Thomas Tuchel at the moment, his injury problems, sort of his form, his future at Chelsea, his career. I sort of want to get into a lot of this today because I think there are many different sides that I've seen points made about Pulisic as well. And I think personally for me, I think it'd be very silly for Chelsea to let Christian Pulisic, a talent like Pulisic, go. And I'm going to get into that in today's episode. Also, the second part of today's episode, I want to look at the centre-back situation. Once again, targets that have come out this week. Chelsea potentially signing one in the summer. Who could that be? Who could be the dream signing and dream target in that area? We'll get into that and much more in today's episode. But before we do, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. So firstly, Christian Pulisic, there's been some reports recently surrounding him at the end of the season potentially wanting to exit Chelsea. It mostly came out from tabloids, but Fabrizio Romano on his transfer podcast yesterday spoke about Pulisic's future. He said at the moment Pulisic wants to wait until the end of the season and doesn't want to cause problems, but if it continues like this, Pulisic will be one of the candidates to leave this summer. So when it's coming from Romano, you do take it a lot more seriously. Of course, tabloids have jumped on this and claimed it's going to be Man United, Liverpool coming in for him potentially in the summer. So yeah, I think it would be a shocked, abrupt ending to Christian Pulisic's short Chelsea career if he was to leave this summer. And I think personally for me, number one, and I think it's a very obvious thing to say, it does feel like it's got the potential of this, if Chelsea were to let Pulisic go this summer, of another situation where we let a promising young attacker go before he has the time to develop. I think people forget how young Christian Pulisic still is in his career. I think maybe because he was at Dortmund before, he gained a lot of adoration there. He's come to Chelsea, the big fee, 60 million. You know, even in today's market, 60 million is still a very decent fee, very big fee that Chelsea paid for him. And as well, the young players in the current squad as well, the likes of Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Reece James. I think people forget how young Pulisic is. He's younger than some of those players as well. So I think if you're willing to give patience to younger players to develop, I think you have to give the same to Pulisic, especially with a guy who's had a lot of injury issues in the past year. If you look at this season in particular, he's missed 12 games through injury. I didn't include the Sheffield United one because that was for personal reasons, but 12 games he has missed through injury this year. He's only made 25 appearances so far, 2 goals, 1 assist, 1 goal in the Champions League, 1 goal in the Premier League, only 13 starts for the Blues this season. If you compare that to 1920, where he had 34 appearances, scored 11 goals, 10 assists, he had 1 major injury which kept him out from January to March, and that was a tear in the abductor. But if you compare that to this season, he's had 3 to sort of 4 injury problems this year that sort of kept him out. It's been a very stop and start year for Christian Pulisic. He did not have a pre-season, which he had in the summer of 2019, when he arrived under Frank Lampard after leaving Borussia Dortmund. Of course, didn't have a pre-season. I mean, Chelsea did not have a pre-season, but he didn't start playing, I don't think, really starting games till like mid-October, so a month into the season this year. He got another injury late October time that kept him out for a few games. It has been very stop and start for Christian Pulisic, and I think for a player working his way back into fitness, I also think coupled with Chelsea trying to manage Pulisic a lot better this year, seeing a player who probably has had issues with injury, has clearly had issues with injury, and maybe trying to stop his body breaking down and trying to be cautious with that, which I think maybe something people don't appreciate in terms of managing players at this intense level. But on top of that, if you're someone that is concerned about the amount of injuries we've had over the past year, I don't think you can moan at Chelsea and the medical department for taking their time and being a little bit more cautious with Pulisic, a young player this season, given the amount of injuries he's had over a short period of time at Chelsea. So that's one thing as well. Also, the constant argument around the worry of selling young attackers that go on to flourish later on in their career, and Chelsea really regret it, not giving them the time and patience to succeed, is an old story. I've used it with a lot of players in this current squad that I'm concerned that we're letting go too soon, and I think Pulisic is another one. You can't use that excuse for every player because you can't keep every player. That's pretty simple, and I think context matters in the current situation. But I do think you can justify more patience with Pulisic given how good he was at the end of 1920 and given how good he was last season. I think he was absolutely mesmerising. He really was. If you were watching this channel back then, you know how much of a fan I was of Christian Pulisic. Also speaking about this season, which unfortunately has not gone to plan for him personally, where I felt that he could, if he had a consistent run of games, if he didn't get injured, didn't get that terrible hamstring injury at the back end of 1920, the FA Cup final against Arsenal that ruled him out of that game, ruled him out of the start of the season. I felt he could be such an instrumental player for Frank Lampard. I felt that he could be a almost 10 to 20 goal a season winger, because I saw a player with such anticipation to get into the box to score goals, such hunger to score goals as well. His ability off the ball, his ability on it too, just absolutely electric. Some have claimed since then that's a real purple patch within his career, which it may be, but he's still such a young player, and we haven't seen the same bulk of games he had last season to this season. If you just look at it, he's not been able to maintain starting week in, week out. And it's difficult, right? If you're a player coming back from injury and you're in a team with so much competition. Thomas Tuchel is a manager famed for rotation. He's rotating pretty consistently at the moment. He's making 5 changes after one Premier League game, and it's still working for him. Unfortunately for Pulisic, he isn't benefiting off of that rotation. So the 5 changes that were made on Monday for Everton compared to Liverpool, Pulisic was still on the bench. I think he came on for like the final couple of seconds. It felt like he barely got any time. When he is playing, he's playing on the right instead of the left, which I don't think benefits his game personally at Chelsea. I think he looks so devastating when he comes in from the left, wide left, into central areas. That's what he loves to do in his career. If you watch him play, that's where he can be most deadly, drifting in from the left. And you think about Timo Werner's movement off the left, it's quite similar to, and Chelsea playing in this current system with a 3-4-2-1, especially with a false 9 as well. He's not really a roaming 10, despite having number 10 on the back of his shirt. I think he is much more of an electric winger that does like to go out wide and then cut in. So I think that's maybe been difficult for him in the current system as well. I mean, Tuchel has worked with Pulisic early in his career. I don't know if the argument holds that maybe because he knows Pulisic quite well, he's trying to see other players at the moment. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. The reason he may not be playing as much is because he may be leaving at the end of the season. He may have made that clear to the club. We really don't know at the moment. I think there's a lot up in the air. This is very early speculation. I haven't heard Matt Law speak about this. I haven't heard Simon Johnson speak about this. I think there are other big sources surrounding Chelsea that I would like to hear from in relation to this, and also just see the rest of the season out. Pulisic may suddenly find himself in this team. I think people forget that there have been so many players this season who back in January, back in December, we felt were going to be off, specifically in the January transfer window. Marcus Alonso, Andreas Christensen, Jorginho, who are now sort of key players in this first team. I do think there are so many attacking players in that area, and if Chelsea are persistent and they are going to sign another striker in the summer, it could make it even more difficult for Christian Pulisic to get minutes next year. I just feel that with this player, with this talent, who hasn't had a full season once again to really prove himself, yes, if he keeps on breaking down, it's going to be difficult for him to maintain any sort of consistency in performance, because you can't really rely on a player who keeps on breaking down. But we have to see that over a longer period of time. For me, still so young, I think has got so much potential. I think in terms of his threat in front of goal, I think he could turn into a very devastating player in all facets for Chelsea, really in attack. And I don't want to see that go to waste again. That's just my personal opinion. I know there are other people who may look at his injury record, really be concerned about that, could look elsewhere and think, Chelsea could get goals into this team. And if Pulisic is sacrificed, that's the nature of Chelsea Football Club. I think it'd be a similar mistake repeating itself by the club, and I think they may come to regret it in the coming years. Those are my thoughts on Christian Pulisic. I think we have to wait and see what happens for the rest of the season. There still is a chunk of the season to go. Whether Pulisic can get back into the team as a regular starter, I think it looks doubtful at the moment, given now Kai Havertz coming back into form. If he really nails down one of those starting 3 spots, it's going to be difficult for Pulisic as well. If Timo Werner finds goal scoring form, Hudson-Odoi looks good, Mason Mount, you always want Mason in this team, Ziyech too getting starts. Pulisic very much is going down the pecking order at the moment, and can he get back up in the coming weeks for Thomas Tuchel? We'll have to wait and see. Let me know your opinions on Pulisic and his future in the comments below. And secondly, I want to talk about some transfer stuff with the centre-back situation. Chelsea wanting to target a new one this summer. This comes from 2 good sources. Firstly, Fabrizio Romano on his podcast, along with speaking about Pulisic, he spoke about Jose Gimenez from Atletico Madrid and claiming that Chelsea's dream centre-back target is Gimenez from Atletico this summer. And also another piece in conjunction with this earlier in the week around the centre-back situation from Simon Johnson in The Athletic. Chelsea's informed defenders are giving Tuchel a welcome problem. And in this article where he talks about Christensen, he talks about Rudiger, Dave, sort of that whole centre-back situation currently with the first team squad, but also looking forward to the summer. He said it is understood that signing an imposing centre-back, one that can lead and dominate the back line, is on the wish list. Bayern Munich's Nicolas Saul, RB Leipzig's Ibrahim Konate, and Atletico Madrid's Jose Gimenez, whom they have admired since 2016, are 3 of the names under consideration. As revealed by The Athletic, Chelsea made an inquiry for another Bayern player in David Alaba last summer, but he has made it clear he wasn't interested in a move to Stamford Bridge. His wage demands would be an issue regardless. So once again, Alaba being killed dead over a potential summer transfer move. I think this is an interesting position for Chelsea because I think the knock-on effect of this, I think, is going to be pretty big for several players. If Christensen continues his brilliant form, if Rudiger once again continues to be a big player for Thomas Tuchel, he has been so far. Dave as well being in a back three. If he sticks to the back three, you want Dave in there currently. Despite his age, he's performing so well and competently as that leader for the back three once again. A bit like under Antonio Conte, that role just seems to suit him, especially at this part of his career, where he doesn't have really the pace or the acceleration to be a fullback on his own, and we want Reece playing there as well. I think that helps him. But I also think if we are to sign one of these centre-backs, especially Gimenez, who I do think out of these, despite having injury problems this season, I think is probably the best one out of these three that I think you'd go for. And he probably is the most expensive as well. That's why he's the dream centre-back target, as Fabrizio Romano claims about the club. But I also think the knock-on effect of someone like Fikayo Tomori, more and more I think he ain't coming back. I just think he's so happy at AC Milan at the moment. I was listening to him speak. I've listened to him give interviews to Matt Law as well. I spoke about this with Jay McIntosh on our pod. You can get the link in the description box below. We spoke about Tomori. And I just, more and more think he ain't coming back. I think for his own personal career, he probably sees the situation at Chelsea, not only not getting an opportunity for the past year at the club, but as well seeing if Chelsea are going to give more chances to Christensen, a new contract to Christensen, and they sign a new centre-back on top of that. You also think about Kurt Zouma, who in the past, as Matt Law has claimed, would be happy to move on. If he's not getting first-team opportunities, he'll move on as well. So a bit like everyone on the pitch with this very bloated squad, if Chelsea do sign a new centre-back that is going to be sort of a guaranteed starter or someone that you think is going to be really imposing and a big part of Tuchel's defence, whether it's a back three, whether it's a back four, that's going to change the futures for a lot of players within this first team squad. And I think that Zouma, Tomori, I think will be two sort of players that may find themselves looking elsewhere for football, especially Tomori. I think will just stay at Milan. We have looked pretty flawless under Thomas Tuchel so far in his back three system. Whether he keeps that for next year, if he can bring in someone like, say, Gimenez in the summer or another centre-back to maybe revert to a back four, especially with Thiago Silva, you expect to still be here next year as well. That's another centre-back I just forgot about. How could I forget about Thiago Silva? But there are so many players in this squad in positions, key positions, and their futures will be decided, I think, sooner rather than later. Whether Chelsea can sell some of their unwanted players, that's been an issue too. But I think that, especially for Chelsea, it's quite clear now they're going to try and prioritise centre-back. They're probably going to prioritise striker. I think they should be prioritising central defensive midfield as well. I think someone like Tchouaméni, who I spoke about the other day, I think is a really exciting prospect. But I think that's another area of the pitch that I think sort of works in tandem with the centre-back situation, because I still think there are question marks whether Christensen can operate in a back four compared to a back three, which is so much suited. And as well, for me, over a 38-game season, if Chelsea want to win the Premier League title next year, can this current system that at times is a little bit cautious, it's working so well at the moment, and I don't think you can moan as a fan, but I think that's another thing that's, for me, you have to bring into the discussion for next season. But those are my thoughts on the centre-back situation. Out of those targets, Gimenez, Sula, Konate, other centre-back targets like Varane I spoke about in the past, who would you like to see Chelsea sign in that area in the summer? And also the futures of Fikayo Tomori and Kurt Zouma. Give me your thoughts on those in the comments below. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again